Failure is never final. That's the apt theme for our reflections this week as we journey with Peter. Peter, one of the most exciting, Peter, one of the most interesting, and yet Peter, one of the most unpredictable characters in the New Testament. And we're journeying with Peter in our reflections this week, looking at his denial, his threefold denial of Jesus Christ. In our reflections yesterday, we looked at Peter going downhill. Peter was on a slippery slope, and that slippery slope led him to deny Jesus. Let's read of Peter's denial of Jesus from Matthew chapter 26 and verse 69. Let's read the word of God together. At that time, as Peter was sitting in the courtyard, a servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." But Peter said to all the people there that he was never with Jesus. He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." When he left the courtyard and was at the gate, another girl saw him. She said to the people there, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter said he was never with him, saying, "I swear I don't know this man, Jesus." A short time later, some people standing there went to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of those who follow Jesus. The way you talk proves it." And Peter began to place a curse on himself and swear, "I don't know the man." At once a cockerel crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had told him. "Before the cockerel crows, you will say 3 times, 'You don't know me.'" Then Peter went outside and cried bitterly. Matthew, in his narrative, moves, as it were, from the trial of Jesus in the courtroom to what we might call Peter's trial in the courtyard. While Jesus makes the good confession before his accusers, Peter, on the other hand, denies Jesus before those who, in a sense, were accusing him. Jesus confesses that he is the Messiah, and Peter, who had earlier confessed that Jesus was the Messiah, now denies that he ever knew him. "I don't know this man. I haven't a clue what you're talking about." We looked yesterday at the downward slippery slope leading to Peter's denials, and we see in our reflection today, tomorrow, and on Thursday a further regression with each of Peter's successive denials. So let's look today at Peter's first denial. The first denial, verses 69 to 70. Peter says, "I don't know what you're talking about." The girl said to him, the servant girl, "You were with Jesus of Galilee." "I don't know what you're talking about," he said to the girl. This girl doesn't accuse Peter of blasphemy or any crime. She simply states the facts. You were with him. This statement, this accusation, comes from a non-threatening person, a servant girl, not from a man, but from a woman, not from an older woman, but a girl, not even a free girl, but a servant. Now just picture the scene and picture the irony of this. Peter is a grown man, and here he is, feeling threatened by a young servant girl. Peter is a grown man, and here he is, feeling threatened by a young servant girl. The Gospel of John tells us that she was the doorkeeper. So she would have seen Peter when he entered the courtyard with John. Read John 18, verses 16 to 17 for the context. And she approaches him and says, "You were with Jesus of Galilee." See, this was catching Peter off guard. Perhaps Peter was preparing himself to stand up for Jesus in some grand way before the temple guards or before the Sanhedrin, but instead Peter was thrown a curveball. Peter was caught off guard by the simple statement of a servant girl. He was thrown off guard by the simple statement of a servant girl. And often we can be thrown off guard by the simple statement, maybe even of a girl, a boy, a man, or a woman. We get tripped up, as it were, like Peter did, by a simple opportunity to speak a word for Jesus and to say that we do not deny him, but we are one of his. "I don't know what you're talking about," said Peter. Honestly, can we sometimes be like that? We need to be ready to speak a word for Jesus at school, at work, in the supermarket, with a neighbour. See, Peter doesn't come right out in this first denial and deny Jesus 100%. But the flip side of the coin is he doesn't speak up for Jesus either. He's deliberately evasive in his answer. How often am I? How often are you? How often are we evasive in our answers about Jesus? Peter's first denial, "I don't know what you're talking about." Join me tomorrow in Teaching Truth as we look at Peter's second denial when he said, "I don't even know the man."